I'll go straight to David Cullinane. David, good morning.
Good morning, Damien. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Hundreds of residents were discharged from hospitals to nursing homes without being tested for coronavirus, according to the head of Nursing Homes Ireland. This is CEO Tadhg Daly. A lot of people would have been following this with great interest yesterday, and the ins and outs of this, the intricacies of this, because whatever about committees in the Dáil and the OIREACHTAS, David, and you're involved in this, they don't have life and death matters to examine. And this is why this is so important, is it?
Of course it's important, and I suppose it's easy sometimes with the benefit of hindsight to look back at mistakes that were made. And, you know, I'm conscious that we had very senior officials like the Chief Medical Officer, senior officials in the department and elsewhere that were dealing with a whole range of issues that they had to respond to. So I think we have to have that in the front of our minds when we look at all of these issues. But Nursing Homes Ireland were before the committee yesterday. They had been saying very publicly for some time that they were very concerned about what was happening or not happening in nursing homes. Their overarching concern, I suppose, and I share that concern, was that there was no specific sectoral plan for nursing homes. So in the very early stages of this crisis, you recall that there was a plan for every single acute hospital in the state, and we had a very, very thorough and a very productive plan that worked for University Hospital Waterford. So every hospital obviously had its plan, and that plan at its heart was to protect the frontline staff, to make sure that the hospital had capacity, to make sure that it had staff, that it had PPE, but crucially to keep people safe and to keep patients in the hospital safe. It seems on the face of it that that didn't happen in nursing homes, that there was no overarching plan. And I suppose what we learned over the course of the last couple of weeks, there was a couple of hearings in nursing homes, was that there was hundreds of emails that were exchanged between Nursing Home Ireland and the Department of Health, the HSE, the Chief Medical Officer, where Nursing Homes Ireland were pointing out all of these failures from late February right through the month of March, looking for meetings with the Minister, looking for a plan, looking for human and financial resources, but pointing out what they saw were the real problems. So if I can just read some of what was in the opening statement, it was from the head of the Nursing Homes Ireland. There was insufficient testing of residents. Mm-hmm. The issue that you raised, that there was a discharge of patients from hospital, which had to be done into nursing homes, but that they weren't tested as they were discharged. There was a mass shortfall of PPE. Some nursing homes were actually using painters' overalls as and other temporary makeshift PPE equipment that was insufficient. There was a shortage of other equipment. There was an aggressive recruitment of nursing home staff by the HSE into hospitals, and there was a pushback from nursing homes that was going to have an impact on their ability to provide safe services to older people. And I suppose the point that they were making, and it's an obvious point to make now, that nursing homes was going to be an obvious challenge, because we know, and we knew very early on, that older people were most susceptible to the virus. So it does seem that the ball was dropped in relation to nursing homes.
You preface your remarks by talking about a crisis, and everybody understands that, and you're right with that, and that comes into context. The questions that have to be asked from my perspective and from so many different people's perspective, was the ball dropped, as you say, or was there a conscious effort, or was there, I wonder, will we find out? Did they say at some stage, listen, we'll deal with nursing homes in a few weeks' time, or afterwards? We need to get our hospitals sorted first. And there was a priority on the hospitals, and you've said that, and I agree with you on that. But if there's a question of basically ignoring the nursing homes, for example, Tadhg Daly, he singled out the National Treatment Purchase Fund, the NTPF, the authority responsible for commissioning the nursing home care, saying they fell silent as homes incurred considerable cost to manage the pandemic, and then also raised issues about, as you say, the importance of the nursing homes within the crisis situation. So I wonder, was it a case that basically they said, well, listen, we'll let the nursing homes look after themselves, and if they don't manage, they don't manage?
I don't want to make that judgment at this point in time, Damien, because the consequences of that would be that if that was the case, and I'm not saying it was the case, then that would mean that hundreds of older people were left to die in nursing homes. And I think that would be very, very stark and very, very serious. So a number of people have said, and I think this will happen, that as we emerge out of this crisis. And obviously we're focused on the here and the now, and we still have to protect people. The virus is still here, and the economy is starting to reopen, that there's huge pressures on people who are making decisions. I don't want to second guess at this point those decisions that they made or make that type of judgment. But what we did hear yesterday from Nursing Homes Ireland was a frustration and what seemed to be a cry for help over the course of about 6 weeks, where they were pointing out all of these issues, and they didn't seem to be getting back the response. Now, the issue that you raised when Tyg Daly was talking about the National Treatment Purchase Fund falling silent, that was in relation to the financial shortfall.
Yes.
I think the bigger issue is in relation to the shortfall of staff, the fact that there was an aggressive recruitment that they put it for nursing home staff to go into hospitals, and also the shortage of equipment. And these are obviously critical issues. And one of the key lines in his opening statement, and he, when questioned by myself as well, said that he personally felt let down, that he felt the state and the state actors, if you like, let down people in nursing homes, the residents in nursing homes and their families. And the key line in his opening statement was that key state organisations left the nursing home sector and its residents isolated in those early days, and that this dismay will live forever with us. Obviously, that's very, very serious.
Very serious accusation, yeah.
And I think it's traumatic, and because it's traumatic and because there are people who lost loved ones, I think we need to be very careful politically how we deal with this, that we don't rush to judgment, that we have, and that's the purpose of this committee, that we forensically go through all of the different pieces of correspondence, that we understand that when we're looking at this, that we have the benefit of hindsight. But undoubtedly, I think almost everybody accepts that mistakes were made, and that maybe the focus, undoubtedly, there should have been on nursing homes, wasn't on nursing homes. Whether that was deliberate, whether that was accidental, is something maybe that we may in the end get to the bottom of. But I think there's no doubt whatsoever that they were left behind. But just make one quick point.
Yeah.
We escaped the worst of it, thank God.
We did in Waterford,
in nursing homes in Waterford, and I want to commend all of the staff in those nursing homes and the owners of those nursing homes. It doesn't matter to me whether it's a public or a private nursing home. It has older people in those nursing homes who need to be protected. So some people are, make the arguments around private nursing homes. It doesn't matter to me at this point. It's all of the facilities where people needed to be kept safe should have had the support of the state, should have been protected and should have been supported.
And I know we
did escape the worst of it in Waterford.
We did, and there was very good. You're right.
Good.
Yeah, sorry, David. You were right. There was very good organisation there, and we covered that from the start. And we went out to Havenwood, and they had made a decision a kind of a month beforehand to start buying their own PPE. So nursing homes were left up effectively to look after themselves. And we went down to St. Carthage's down in Lismore and the care home there. And the work that's been done locally and in South Kilkenny, Waterford, has been phenomenal. So that's there. But on a national level, for example, nursing homes were refused when they asked to be part of that COVID team, that NEFID team. They weren't allowed on that. Why was that? So there's all these questions that have to be asked. Can you just tell me, David, what is the situation regarding the next stage of this? Like, people and within departments, they'll talk about systems and they'll talk about all that. Systems are people. Is anybody going to be held accountable for the decisions that were made during February and March on this?
Well, I don't think we'll get to the bottom of all of that until there's a government formed, until we have all of the sector committees in place. I would imagine that there will be a role for the Public Accounts Committee to look back on this. As I said, there has been a call from a number of politicians and from people outside of the political sphere as well for a full public inquiry. I think that's obviously a matter for the new government. I think there does need to be as much scrutiny on this as possible, because it isn't about a witch hunt and it isn't about second guessing at this point what decisions were made. The fundamental point that you raised around whether this was deliberate, whether this was a strategy, that's a reasonable question to ask. And it's not that we have the answer or that we're being blatant in terms of coming down one way or the other and saying that's what happened. But what we do know for certain is that nursing homes were not given the supports that they need. I don't think it's acceptable that they weren't at that high level working group, because they represent nursing homes. And again, I think what the Minister was saying last night on prime time was that the HICWA is the authority, but we also know the HICWA didn't have the powers that maybe they should have had in some of these areas as well. So it would have made sense to me, and this was part of that 700 pages of correspondence and emails that were going over and back. There was actually Nursing Homes Ireland that were looking for this high-level group to be put in place. And then when it was set up, they weren't at the table. And obviously, they're the people who would have the on-the-ground knowledge of here's what's happening. So it did, to me, seem extraordinary that they weren't there.
I know. I can ask you again, it's not political point scoring and anything, David, but like if people are texting in saying, did Sinn Féin or why didn't Sinn Féin raise this at the time?
Well, we did, and we raised it consistently. Like the other point to make is that the Dáil is not sitting in its full capacity, so it's more difficult now for politicians to be able to communicate messages. But we had a regular briefing with the Department of Health, so our health spokesperson Louise O'Reilly was attending meetings that took place, I think, twice weekly with senior officials in the department. We raised this. Mary Lou MacDonald raised this several times, put it on the record of the Dáil. We raised it directly with the Taoiseach, with the Minister for Health. We were engaging almost on a weekly and sometimes on a daily basis with Nursing Homes Ireland, so they were lobbying us and we were raising these concerns. But we didn't have all of the information, and we obviously have to be very careful as well that we weren't being sensationalist or alarmist in making claims when you don't have the full information. So I think what you need to do, Damien, is get all the information at any given time. We did put on record our concerns, and even at this point, despite the fact that I'm very clear in my head that mistakes were made, I'm not in a position to point the finger at anybody and say that this was deliberate. But I think we need to have a thorough examination of this, and whatever form that needs to take, that has to happen, because people did die in nursing homes. That was probably inevitable anyway, that some would, but if more people died than should have had died, because we didn't have an overall overarching comprehensive plan that we had for acute hospitals, that to me is a massive failure. And I'm very conscious that there are families who were bereaved, who didn't see their loved ones, and it's a really emotional, emotive issue that I don't want to add to by saying things that I'm not certain of at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Finally, David, and briefly, please, if you don't mind, the current state of play regarding the university status in the South East. We heard yesterday the merger of CIT and IT in Tralee. Are we lagging behind down here?
We are. It's a big frustration of mine, Damien, because I'm a big supporter of the Technological University. I know other people have their views. Some people say the Waterford should go it alone. There are risks in all of this, but I think Waterford and the South East, again, falling behind, potentially could be the last consortia to get a university. I think is problematic. We actually met, the new OIREACHTAS members met with Willie Donnelly and his team, I think it was about a week after the election, and we made those points very forcibly that we can't be the ones again left behind. So there are issues within the region, undoubtedly, but there are also issues in relation to I think some historic issues in relation to mistakes that were made initially when the criteria were set up that worked against the South East. But whatever about the reasons, again, other consortium are going ahead. Dublin has their technological university. Other regions are pressing ahead. We have Munster with Kerry and Cork pressing ahead, and again, the South East lags behind it. And bear in mind, the whole process of technological universities was based on delivering a university for the South East. So it's actually quite ironic that we end up then being the last region potentially, and still no guarantee. So it is a huge concern, because for me it's part of the future of Waterford, that we're a university city with a university that's fit for purpose, that's fit for the South East, and that focuses on what it needs to focus on to create the jobs that we need. So I am frustrated, and I think people
a lot of people are. Yeah. Well. David Cullinane, Sinn Féin TD, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Fáilte Road, Slán go fóill.